Welcome to KYD. As you can tell, it's winter time, and I thought that was the perfect time of year to update our camera review gear video. This has been highly requested because over the years, subscribers to KYD have noticed that a lot of the gear has changed, and you wanted my input on what we're using now, what we like, what we don't like. Now, this is gonna be a massive video, and to make it easy to navigate, I've included chapters at the bottom so that you can skip to the stuff that you think is most pertinent to you. Who is this video for? Not really for YouTubers or video creators. Rather, this video is for those that want to capture your adventure, document your experiences so that you can share with family and friends. A lot of questions on Facebook were like, what's the best camera to get started? What's the most affordable camera? What's the camera that has the most bang for the buck? So in this episode, we're going to talk about, of course, DSLR cameras. We're going to talk about point and shoot cameras like this Canon M100. We're going to talk about the lenses that we use. Of course, mics. I'm talking to a Rode VideoMic Pro Plus mic right now, but we also have this Zoom mic that we do voiceover. We're going to talk about action cams and GoPros, all the GoPros we've had over the years and which ones I like best. We'll even talk about GoPro accessories, lighting, mics, stuff like this. Of course, we'll talk about drones if we can and have time. We're going to take a little field trip. We'll talk about this Mavic Air 2S, and then we'll talk about external hard drives, why I switched over to these SSD drives for editing, and then you can see a pile of external hard drives for backups, even though I don't back up, and I'll tell you why later. And then even how I store SD chips in this, which I absolutely love, so I want to talk to you about that. Oh, not to mention the iPhone, and when do I use the iPhone versus when do I use the GoPro? When do I talk to the DSLR? When does it make sense to use a point and shoot? So that is a lot of information to cover, and I will do my best to make it entertaining as possible by overlaying footage from our episodes to give you examples of what we're talking about. But mostly, this is just going to be a very long and hopefully informative video. So with that being said, we should start. You know, as I was editing this video, I felt like it lacked a little bit of purpose. As I go into all the nuances of a GoPro and DSLRs and audio and drone footage and things like this, it might be interpreted as just a lot of work. And I just wanted to share a different perspective on capturing footage before we dive into all the details. When Trish and I watch our videos and we watch some of the episodes, we think, oh my gosh, we forgot that. And we're capturing these little moments in time through these adventures that we look back and they're even more special. As you've heard us say before, you know, things depreciate over time, but experiences appreciate over time. And we feel like there's really nothing more rewarding than capturing the footage. And you don't have to be a great videographer to do that. You don't have to have all the very best equipment. In fact, Trish has a great suggestion, and that is just use Instagram to capture stories and then save them to your phone. Because oftentimes it's just those little moments on a trip that you're gonna remember, and it's just capturing those moments.
That's horrible.
So before we dive into all the technical details, I wanted to provide just a little bit of inspiration by sharing with you a video we made last year documenting our adventure from when we first got started through last year in an effort to provide a little bit of inspiration for the importance of documenting your experiences.
Two, three.
I found boxes of first CDs, trying to get my office clean. 10 years
Are you like a guardian angel?
I'm not that bad. Dad, how many seatbelts do we have?
And I saw hesitant poses and torn up jeans.
Hi, Charlie.
In cover photos friends took for free. For the 6-minute songs and all their lifelong dreams, the world turned down.
This is what I get to make those.
Yes, this is what you get, yes. What the heck?
And they're just dreaming of some life out on the road.
Oh my gosh, that was nerve-wracking.
All I dream about's the day that I'll be home.
12 years old. Dude, you're crushing it.
Carson Fleach.
Thank God for boxes of first CD. On through this Rolodex of railroad tracks and fresh cut hair, I see joy.
Those are not from.
No, they're grizzly.
Those are grizzly bears, my friends.
Looks
Yeah.
different now than she does right there, but that that's how it goes.
Trish, is it Lobo?
As for the rest, I bet they're teachers or pastors now, pictured in jackets, girlfriends picked out. All their hometowns tan these up, all the labels turn them down.
Yeah.
They never wrote.
Mark, Trish, Tori, Carson, Caleb. It was amazing. 10.
They're just dreaming of some life out on the road. Oh. All I dream about's the day that I'll be
Caleb's
home.
dancing. People are screaming out their window. It was really good.
I guess I forgot the way it feels to chase a dream. Thank God for boxes of first CDs. Yeah. Thrift store jacket and 10 less pounds. Looking like a fool in some big field with my bare feet on the ground. Bad song titles and worse drum sounds.
He's waiting for the bed to be made for him. He thinks we make the bed for him.
All
And now-
my dreams have come true out here on the road.
Hello. Hi, 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 hi.
Never dreamed that I could call
You're
this
like,
life
I
my
see you
own.
out in the middle of nowhere and I still get a warm shower.
Thought I'd forgotten how it feels to chase a dream.
I think we have a watertight seal now.
Okay.
Thank God for how it feels to
I love
chase
you
a
guys and I love this bus. So.
dream. Thank God for
is
boxes
nice.
of first.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yes.
Most of the footage that you just saw was taken with early generation GoPros and iPhones, and certainly not the cameras that I'm going to be sharing with you in this video. So before we dive into the details, I just wanted to share with you a couple tips on documenting your adventures and not being overwhelmed in the process. You might be able to relate with going on a trip and coming home with all of this footage and not knowing where to start, and then months, even years go by, and you never turned it into the video that you intended to make. Oftentimes that's because we capture so much footage that we come back and we can't even remember where things are. And my suggestion, because it is important to document our experiences, is to stick to the fun stuff, at least early on. You know what's fun is taking a GoPro and getting a great time lapse of something pretty, or maybe even getting a night time lapse like this right here. Or if you have a drone, getting a few drone shots of what's going on. And then I think a lot of us are accustomed to sending video messages now to friends and family. So take your phone, put it in camera mode, turn it horizontal, and talk to the camera as if you're talking to your friends, and keep it to 30 seconds and 1 minute as if you're going to send it off to someone. You know, hey, we're here at the Grand Canyon and here's who we're with and here's what we're doing and here's the time of year. So when you get home, you've got all the fun stuff. You've got the narrative on your iPhone or your Android. You've got a couple time lapses and a couple drone shots. You put it together. Maybe it's 3 minutes long. You have some fun, and over time, you might think to yourself, all right, next time, I'll do this, and I'll do this differently, but you can get started. You've probably heard us say before, start small, start now, and the same applies to videography. So, as we get into all these technical details in this video, don't think that you have to know everything to get started. Don't fall into the trap of getting too much footage, or fall into the trap of not starting until you have a big DSLR camera. Just start, document those experiences, and have fun. With that being said, let's get started. Okay, before we dive into each of the categories, I want to provide just an overview of all the different types of cameras and really share with you what is the difference between the camera I'm talking to, which is a DSLR, versus a GoPro and an iPhone. Because one of the trending questions was, how do you know the difference between when to use your GoPro versus your iPhone or the big Canon? And how often to use each of these. So let's just talk about that real quick, and then we're gonna move into action cams. So the camera I'm talking to is a Canon EOS R. It is a DSLR camera, which a DSLR is basically like a camera that you would think of as a professional photographer would use to like shoot a wedding, to take really pretty photos. But over the years, these cameras have evolved to taking video. Now, why would a video creator want to use a camera that was designed for photography? And that is because the technology inside that camera is so great when it comes to focus and color that it just takes really rich video. But more importantly than that, The benefit of the DSLR is that you're able to change and put on very sophisticated lenses. And any professional photographer or videographer will tell you that ultimately it's going to come down to the glass. This is where the sharpness is going to come from, especially on a full sensor camera. And it's going to give you what's called like depth of field, meaning when it's focused on me, you get that blurry background because you can zoom in on the point you want, and then the background tends to disappear, just like would happen with your eye.
I feel like I'm gonna scratch the GoPro every time I do something.
What's this?
I feel like I'm gonna scratch the... Is that the telescopic?
So it creates a really natural looking video that you're able to focus. Whereas a GoPro that is incredibly sharp and has crazy resolution that gives me the ability to zoom in, which is great, it doesn't have that focus point. It doesn't focus on me right here, it focuses on everything. It focuses on the background, me, the foreground, everything is in focus. And so you kind of lose that cinematography feeling with a GoPro, which is often why I'm gonna use a DSLR for the key footage and the narrative, not to mention the microphone that we're gonna talk about later. So generally speaking, I'm gonna use the GoPro to record action footage, time lapses, night time lapses, driving down the road, things of this nature, rafting, any type of sport. We just recently rode our bikes from Michigan down to Florida. It was the GoPro that was on my handlebars the entire time. That's what I'm gonna use it for. But the key narrative and all the cinematography shots are gonna be shot on the DSLR. And then of course the question is, when would I use the iPhone? And the answer is as little as possible, or only when I have to. The iPhone is great because it's incognito. I don't have to walk into it with a big camera and be like, oh, what's this guy doing here with this camera and this big mic? Or does he have permission to be recording? Sometimes it's nice to just be like everybody else recording something with your iPhone. The drawback to the iPhone is that the audio is not very good. And when it comes to video creation, people can handle out of focus, lower resolution, maybe even a little bit of shakiness, but very few people can handle bad audio. And the audio on an iPhone is good, it's just not great. When we use the iPhone, it tends to be for B-roll and not narrative, unless if it's our only camera, which happens quite a bit. Now, remember what I said, the difference between like a DSLR and a GoPro is that like depth of field, that blurry background, or other people might call it like a buttery shot. Well, iPhone's actually doing this inside software. Like here's a B-roll shot of me just getting footage of the Canon. And as you can tell, the iPhone is using software to focus on the camera and like blur out the background. It's not doing this through like the lens and the focus, so it's kind of cheating. It's not great, but it's still pretty good. And so anytime I use the iPhone, a lot of times I'll get in the comments and they'll say, hey Mark, did you get a new camera? It looks great. And it's the iPhone. Crazy. The number one thing to do before you get any iPhone shot, period, the end, is to clean the lens with like your shirt. Because what happens is, because it's our phone and we're touching it all the time, we'll get fingerprints on the lens and it'll ruin a shot. It'll make it, let me turn that off, it'll make it blurry or fuzzy, even on the front. So before you get any footage with the iPhone, take a minute and clean. Even a picture, you'll see that just night and day difference between a picture before and after cleaning your lens. Now let's talk about action cams, GoPros, and GoPro accessories that might be worth considering. As you can tell here, I've had a fair amount of GoPros, starting with my first love, which was the Session 5. I just loved the form fit of this. This was the first GoPro that didn't really require a case to make it waterproof, and I was in love with it. But the stabilization, I mean, they quickly moved on from this into GoPros that had much higher stabilization. I think the GoPro 6 was like called the gimbal killer, and it really was. The stabilization of the GoPros has come so far. It's absolutely amazing the conditions that I've had the camera in with absolutely perfectly still footage. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then the very latest GoPro, which is the GoPro 11. When the GoPro 9 came out, that's when they put the screen in the front, and that really was a game changer. So if you want to save some money on a GoPro and you want to buy a later model GoPro, you can go back to the 9 and you'll get a lot of the great stabilization. You'll get the front screen. You'll get the ability to take off this little, that door right here so that you can put it inside this accessory that I'll talk about in a minute. So this is a lot of value for the buck with this slightly older GoPro. If you have a GoPro that tends to be overheating or shutting off randomly or acting up, as they do from time to time, you most likely need a firmware update. If you update your firmware, a lot of those problems are solved. Now, why are GoPros so great is because if you had to only have one camera to capture an adventure or a big trip, this would be the one camera to have. You'd be capturing hiking, going out on boat, inside water. You can capture it for underwater footage. You can get it for daytime time lapses to capture national parks. We even use the later GoPros, the newer model GoPros, to capture night footage. In fact, that would be one reason if you did want to spend a little bit more money and not get a later model GoPro and go for something like the GoPro 11, it's because the nighttime functionality or the nighttime features has come so far. Now I'm using the GoPro 11 to capture nighttime time lapses as we drive. I'm using it to capture nighttime time lapses for like campfires. The night, I haven't done star stuff yet, but it has the capability. I just don't stay up past like 10 o'clock at night. So it's a user issue. It's not a GoPro issue. But GoPros do offer a tremendous amount of technology and functionality. They add a lot to the videos through time lapses, so I'm a big fan. Now, what accessories might be necessary? This is probably my favorite accessory. This little tiny tripod like this, and the reason is I can hold it like this and hold it out and talk to it. If I want to capture a time lapse, I could just bring it out like this and set it down. So this is the most handiest accessory that I have. An absolute essential accessory is a double battery cradle like this. This way that you can always keep a couple batteries that I'm charging in the truck or at all times, that these batteries are ready to go. And you probably notice these batteries are white. These are their longer lasting, newer batteries. I'm always very quick to get the latest batteries and put in the cradle. So I'd say that's essential. And then of course I always have, things like this where I can mount this on the side of the Airstream. I can mount this somewhere to capture an early morning time lapse. Sometimes I'll use the tripod that I'm talking to and I'll walk out into a field and I'll clip it onto the tripod and I can capture a time lapse like that, which is handy. And then when I got together with Brad from Trail Recon in his Jeep and he let me drive his Bronco, I got into his truck and Brad's GoPro looked something like this. All right, this is Brad's GoPro.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for letting me know.
Well, he has trusted us to say things.
I know, but I knew it was Brad's because it's tactical. It has
It's
a light.
got every accessory.
It has a microphone. It's set up perfectly.
I didn't know you could do a build on a GoPro, but apparently you can. We have a stock GoPro 10.
Yes.
And Brad has a full build.
We got a fancy clip, okay? We got a fancy clip.
Yeah.
I think we can go. Is we ready to go?
Here.
Yeah, we can go.
There you go.
We roll out?
Yep, whenever you guys are ready.
Alrighty. So I'll take this out here and I'm gonna show you how this works. Take this out like this, then you fold these things in, and you unsnap it like that, and it just unsnaps. So there's the GoPro, the door stays off, and when you slip it in like this, it just slips in, and now you can use this external mic and this external camera. I found the mic to be better, but not an order of magnitude better. I didn't think that the audio quality was so great that it was worth the trouble of continuing to take this in and out. Because like for instance, every time I wanted to change the battery, I've got to take this off. And in order to take it off, I got to unclip it and take it off its mount. So I found myself, it's only a couple minutes, but I found myself taking it out, pulling out the battery, putting a new battery in, oh, that battery's not charged, doing the whole thing again. All to have slightly better audio. So I stopped using it, but I'm glad I have it. If the GoPro is the only camera you have and you're capturing a lot of narrative with the GoPro, I'd probably suggest getting it. But because for us, the GoPro is B-roll, action footage, time lapse and night time lapse, I don't think it's necessary. Oh, I forgot to talk about GoPro settings. My GoPro 11 is set to 4K, 60 frames per second in a wide angle orientation. And then I changed the time lapse and the nighttime time lapse based upon the situation. But in terms of the standard footage, like my go-to is 4K, it's 60. Now, when we were in New Zealand and we were swimming with dolphins, I increased the frame rate to 120 or higher because I knew that those dolphins were moving so fast. I wanted to have the ability in editing to slow the footage down and still make it smooth. So the more frames you have per second, the more you can slow-mo and get it that nice buttery footage. So now let's talk about drones.
Use my voice to hide with the ghouls of night in the dying light. I had to learn to get what I need in the dark. Empty instincts all guiding me like a beast to some blood, and I can't get enough. I'm losing control, my body, my soul are slowly fading away. But I'm ready now to feel the power of change. I'm my mother's child, I'm my father's son. It took me a while, but my time is come to be born again.
Drones can add a lot to a video. I think it kicks up the professionalism quite a bit. I think for the viewer it's more enjoyable to watch, and the footage is fantastic from transitioning from one part of your video to the next. So in this segment I want to talk a little bit about drones, make some recommendations on where to start if you don't have a drone, even capturing footage, which by the way, not as complicated as you might think. But before we dive into all of that, I want to chat real quick on a common misconception about do you need a remote pilot's license, otherwise known as a 107? There's a common thought that you only need a drone license if A, you're doing it commercially, if you're being paid to fly, or you have a YouTube channel that's monetized, meaning that there's money involved. And the truth is, if you need a 107 or not has nothing to do with money, and it has all to do with the intention of the flight, and is the intention of that flight purely recreational or not. So let me give you a couple examples. Let's say your church wants drone footage of their church. You say, hey, I've got a drone, I'll go get the drone footage and I'll give it to you for free. FAA would look at that and say, that's not recreational. That's an actual purpose, and even though there's not money being exchanged, they're gonna want you to have a drone license. So how do you get your 107 license? When I studied to pass the exam, I used the Pilot Institute course. Greg does a great job stepping his students through every section of the exam, everything you need to know. He does videos in each section, written material, and even sample questions, and he has practice tests. So if you sign up for his course to take you through the process, you'll have everything you need to know, how to actually apply for the exam, like where to take it, and the success rate of his students are incredible. I got like a 98% on the exam. I don't tell you that to brag. I tell you that because his process works really well. So if you're going to get a drone and you're going to get into it, I strongly suggest just going ahead and getting your 107, regardless if your channel's monetized or not, because it's good information to have, and I think you'll enjoy the process. All right, now let's pop into the truck down over on the top of the rim up in northern Arizona to provide some tips on actually capturing drone footage. When it comes to getting spectacular drone shots, I had to say something incredibly obvious, and I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, I promise. If you don't point your drone at something that is amazing, it's not gonna look amazing. I know that's obvious, but sometimes we get so eager to get a drone shot, we'll just get it up in the air and start flying around and get the footage, and then somehow we get like emotionally attached to that footage and include it in videos, and it's really not that interesting. So if I'm gonna go through the trouble of getting a shot, I'm gonna wait until it's a great shot. And I can get this shot right here with just one movement of my thumb. And if you watch National Geographic, the History Channel, you watch amazing drone footage, they're not cute, they're not clever, they're not flying low and then going high, and they're not doing all these things. Like the drone's got a bunch of technology where it can go around things. The best shots are pointing at something that is really stunning and doing a simple movement, right to left, up to down. Maybe if I want to get a little clever, I'll move the drone out this direction, and then if the truck is driving over a bridge, I'll just slowly pan left. So I want to make sure that I'm in cinematic mode. When you're in cinematic mode, it means that the movements are not too fast, and this is almost a little too fast. You want very slow movement. So if I go left, and then I just go ever so slightly to the right, and then let's say Trish is driving, if we're out in a remote area, and I'm just gonna keep it just like that as Trish drives over the bridge. A lot of questions were, how do we get the drone footage when we're driving? Again, this goes back to the 107 and what you'll learn through the process of getting your remote pilot's license, and that is that you can only sit in the passenger seat if you are in a remote area. And if we're not in a remote area, then Trish would drop me off and I would be outside of the vehicle, and then she'd find a place to turn around and go back. We seldomly do that. We'd rather just wait until we're in a remote area because, well, we're 55 feet long and that's kind of hard to turn around. So here I am. I mean, this isn't a great day, but it's not bad because the sunset's coming right over Sedona, and I'm just gonna really slowly move the camera. My suggestion is to get the shot that you're looking for, kind of have an idea of what shot you're looking for, get that shot, and then get an alternative shot and bring it back. If you start flying the drone because you think it's fun, it's just a matter of time before you're gonna lose your drone. Something's gonna happen, you're gonna go down on battery. I'm very purpose driven with the drone. That's the shot I want. I kind of have an idea what I want. I get it up in the air, I get that shot. On my way back, I try to get as many other shots as I can, and I bring it home. I'm not really just out for a joyride, and I know that's fun, and if that's why you buy the drone, then have at it. So now I want to share with you, if you're interested in getting a drone, where is a good place to start, and I want to share with you the different drones that we had. During season 1, I got the DJI Phantom, and these were these big, bulky drones, and I had this huge backpack to carry it around. And as soon as the Mavic came out, I got it because, as you can tell, the form fit of this thing is fantastic, and the battery, the range, the stabilization, everything about it is just simple and easy to use. There's so many GPS satellites connected to this thing that essentially if you just don't touch the remote, it stays in one spot. So easy to operate and navigate. And of course, if you lose connection, it goes right back to home. So knock on wood, we've had the Phantom, the Mavic Pro, the Air 2, and the Mini, all 4 drones, never lost one, never really had a mishap. If you're looking to get a drone, I would strongly suggest sticking with DJI. I think they make the best drone. They've been doing it for so long, and they're so reliable. And if you're just getting into it and you don't exactly know where to start, this is the Air, but the Mini, which I used on our ride from Michigan to Florida, the Mini, I don't have it here, it's in the Airstream, it literally fit in this bike thing that went underneath my seat. So I would just pull over, I would pull the Mini drone out of here. It's just like this, it's just smaller. And that's all the footage that I got going over bridges and through fields and things like this. That particular drone shoots in 1080, but I think the Mini 3, which they have now, is higher resolution. And even the small Mini does a great job like navigating through wind and staying in one spot. I can't speak highly enough of DJI and their drone lineup. So you could probably find a drone in your budget, even if you have to go down a tier or 2 or go back from, like a previous generation, and I think you'll be extremely happy. But if you think you're really gonna get into it, this Air 2S is phenomenal. And the zoom functionality on this is incredible. I think it has 4 times zoom, which is recently allowed me to get some really cool shots that you wouldn't normally be able to get with a drone because I'm so far away, and then I can zoom in over the horizon. So that's just a little bit about drones, how to do it safely, how to capture footage, and then how to get your 107 with Pilot Institute. All right, I've got the GoPro 11 set up so that I can chat about DSLRs and this point and shoot camera, and specifically this mic and resolution. One of the trending questions on Facebook when I asked what questions do you have about camera gear is a lot of people were ready for a quote unquote real camera and they wanted to know where to start. So I want to chat about a great place to start, an entry-level DSLR, and then what I'm holding right here and why I'm holding it. So this point and shoot, this is the Canon M100. It has the ability to zoom, which is great. And the microphone is actually pretty good, and it's small. So this is a great place to start. And it's the camera that we used recently on our entire Cabo trip, other than the iPhone and GoPro. I didn't bring my DSLR. Now, why would you want to move over to a DSLR? And I think the reason is it gives you the ability to use bigger glass. Lenses are gonna make the difference. It's gonna give you the ability to zoom in. The focus is gonna improve, the clarity. If you move to a DSLR like this that's a full sensor lens, you're gonna have great nighttime shots because all that light going into the sensor, which is predominantly why I moved to a mirrorless full sensor Canon. This is the EOS R. Now, but I didn't start here. A great place to start if you like the Canon. I'm partial to Canon, and yet I think Panasonic and Sony provide great cameras too. Even Nikon, but that's more photography. In the Canon line, their Rebel line is their entry-level DSLR. That's where I started, and that's probably a good place to learn videography, understand the cameras, and then improve from there. The glass is extremely expensive. This camera right here was about $3,000, including the 24 to 105 lens, which gives me the ability to zoom in quite a bit, as you can tell. And then this lens right here, which I added later, is a 15 to 35. And the reason I got this lens is because we were doing a lot of RV tours and things inside an RV, or even this video right here, where we were shooting now, where I want more in the frame and more clarity. Plus the nighttime stuff is great too. Now, as I said earlier, video is great, but story is better and audio is key. So this is the Rode mic, Video Mic Pro Plus. This is the best mic I've ever owned. The sound is rich. It's a shotgun mic, so it picks up audio in whichever direction it's pointing, which can sometimes be a problem if you have, loud noise behind you. I obviously have a dead cat on here, which prevents the wind. It's a lithium battery, so I don't have to change the batteries in here. I probably charge this about once a month, maybe not even, and we use it almost every day. So the battery lasts a super long time, and when I turn on the camera and the camera processes, the mic turns on. So I never have to remember to turn off the mic. This mic is worth every penny it costs, because if you have a cheaper mic that you have to replace batteries or you have to remember to turn it on, there will become a time where you have a very important shot and you'll have no audio. Speaking of that, this mic has a safety feature where it records right and left. So to give you an example, when we were working with Gretsch RV and they were kind enough to give our friends Bill and Wendy a gorgeous Class B, and Jeff came out to Michigan to do the whole walkthrough, let me just share with you the type of audio I had.
Bill.
So you can imagine how I was feeling in editing, that I'm now editing a situation that I cannot recreate. And then I remembered that maybe just one of the right or the left was corrupt. And so I went into Adobe and I dragged over right to left, and here's what it sounds like now.
Oh yeah, Jeff, Bill.
Bill. Jeff Ravenscroft, nice to meet you.
So certainly not as good as the right and the left, but I was able to salvage the audio altogether. So when it comes to SD cards and SSD drives, which we're going to talk about next, and audio, those are the areas that you do not want to cheap out on. There are other ways that you can start small and grow, but when it comes to the data and the audio, spend as much as you can afford. Now I want to talk real quick about resolution. This is a 55-inch screen, and we release our videos in 1080. So with this EOS R, I record at 1080 at 60 frames per second. It does record in 4K at 30, but I opt for 60 to get slow motion when I need. This year, sometime this year, I'll probably upgrade to the EOS R5, which will shoot in 4K at 60 frames per second. But as you can see here, the clarity, even at 1080, is pretty dang good. And every once in a while, I'll receive an email from someone asking me to release in 4K because they watch on a TV. And it makes me think that maybe YouTube does this if your internet is not crazy high, or maybe you're watching on a hotspot, or there's a glitch. If you go into this little gear right here, YouTube will match the resolution to the speed of your internet. You see how it says auto? And you can actually change the resolution from 1080 to 720, 480, 360, 240. So if you're experiencing blurry YouTube on your TV or your laptop, just hit that little gear and kick it up to the maximum resolution that that video was released in. And as you can tell, 1080 on a 55-inch screen is pretty clear, but as I said, we'll be moving to 4K sometime throughout this year. All right, now let's talk about maybe the most important thing, and that is your data. Let's talk about the things that are gonna make or break your videos, the stuff that will probably give you the most amount of pain and anxiety as a video creator, and that is SD cards. And then I wanna share with you how I've changed my data storage process and why I switched over to these SSD drives for editing. So real quick, let's talk about SD cards, and I'm really quite excited to tell you about this what is it called? Think Tank? Yeah, these Think Tank SD card wallets, if you will. It's kind of like an old, remember 8th grade, had a little Velcro wallet. Look at what I got here. I've got a series of little zippered pockets, and I've got my full cards at the bottom. I've got my empty cards in the middle, and then on top, I've got cards that sometimes I've transferred the data over to, but I haven't reformatted these. This has been an absolute game changer for storing SD cards. I typically have cards easily accessible. I know exactly where to store them, so I'm not losing them. This is awesome. $23, comes in several different colors, folds up like this, and I put it in my backpack. Highly recommend. Once these cards get full, I move them to an SSD drive like this, a SanDisk SSD drive. This, compared to like a LaCie that would have like a Type-C connection, or this other external hard drive, which I used to use, that's USB, these are the very fastest. So I'm able to edit from these as if the data is local on my computer, which is great. Once this gets full, and I'm still collecting footage, I move to my other SSD card. Once the video is edited, I'll take the other one and I'll back it up. I'll back up all that data to a 5 terabyte LaCie drive, like this. That way, all the files, all the original files, I'm storing on these drives, but I'm editing from the fast ones. So it goes from the card to the SSD drive to be edited, to then the files getting backed up. And then, because I have 2 of these, I'm able to take the one that I've already made episodes from, reformat this, and start over. So I'm able to alternate these, and that way I'm always editing from a fast SSD drive. Now you're probably wondering, why do I not upload to the cloud like when I get home and I have access to high-speed internet? And that's probably a pretty good idea. Like right now would be a good time to be sending all this data up to the cloud and then freeing up these drives so I don't have to buy any more. And that's probably something I'll do. But when we're traveling, I don't upload to the cloud because all of that data would be going through my hotspot. And I have learned personally, this is just personal preference, that the more times you touch data, the more likely you are to make a mistake. I've only had 2 catastrophic situations in the 348 episodes we've made, and both of those was not hardware related, both of those was me making a mistake. And if I talk to other video creators and they have like, they accidentally reformat a drive because they thought the data was over there and it was supposed to be here and they thought it was backed up, my philosophy is use high quality equipment, have a repeatable process for how you get from a card to the SSD drive into a video, and touch it as few times as possible. Just personal preference. One of the big questions I get is, what do I edit with? And I edit with Adobe Premiere Pro CC, which stands for Creative Cloud. And the only reason I edit with Adobe Premiere Pro is because I already had the entire Adobe suite because KYD was originally a podcast and I was using Adobe Audition to do the editing. So it's very easy for me to just turn on Adobe Premiere Pro. If I were to start all over again, being a Mac person, I'd probably use Final Cut Pro. And the reason is I could have purchased Final Cut Pro once instead of a subscription, and it's gonna run a little bit more efficiently and a little bit faster on a Mac, whereas because I'm using Adobe Premiere Pro and I'm using a Mac, I have to continuously upgrade my Mac to the biggest, most powerful, most amount of RAM, and it's kind of expensive. So if I were to do it all over again, I'd probably use Final Cut Pro. Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere Pro Creative Cloud are both professional level editing tools. By no means do you need to start with a professional level editing software. There are lots of different free and inexpensive tools for you to kind of dabble, and then maybe when you start reaching the ceiling of that tool, or you want to do a little bit more, you could invest in something a little bit better then. Now, if you want to take this even further and actually create a YouTube channel, I do have a course on that. It's howtostartayoutubechannel.com, and I'll link it down below. And it really is how to start a YouTube channel, establishing a logo and a brand, understanding how YouTube works, how to upload videos, navigating the platform, creating a story, all that nature. I do want to remind everybody here watching though, if you want to start a channel, don't forget about the experiences or the expertise you might have and you've accumulated over your career. Certainly creating a YouTube channel about RVs and hitting the road is an option, but I want to remind you that you have expertise that you've developed and established, and that could be turned into content in a domain that you already know, potentially taking your career to the next level or reaching new people or creating a new business, and then using that freedom to go do things you like, such as RVing. So I just want to remind you of that there are different ways that you can create a channel. It's not always just documenting all the fun stuff. And on that note, I will say inside the YouTube course, the Facebook creators group alone is worth the enrollment fee, meaning there's a couple thousand people there, incredibly helpful. If any questions at all, your question gets answered immediately. So that's one of the best things that came out of the YouTube course is that community. So if that sounds like it's a good fit for you, I will link it down below, or you can go to howtostartayoutubechannel.com. And I think we're getting pretty close to the end here, huh? All right, even though that this is a camera video, we had to bring Charlie and Trish in.
Hey, what can you say?
Anything you'd like to add to camera gear, capturing footage, documenting experiences?
Well, I just like to say thank you for breaking this all down, because this was a huge video edit.
I hope it was helpful. I don't know. This is one of those things where now that I've done it, I wish I could do it again, because now I know what I'd like to say, but I don't have time because Sunday's coming. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because if you've been sitting on footage for a long time, perfect is done. You just have to do it and get it out there.
Yeah.
And don't overthink it, and don't like, oh, I just need a little bit more time. Just finish it, move on to the next.
Or else you just won't have it.
Yes.
And that's one of the things, one day I had this little light bulb moment that eventually our kids will be able to have this footage. And they will not only know us by image, but they'll know our personality. So we won't get to know them, but they will get to know us. And that is like super special. And less depressing than that is that we get to see our kids and how they've grown up since we've left.
We've always thought that, because a lot of people, when we meet people in person, they say, hey, did you ever think that KYD would turn into this and that we would do this for a living? And the answer is no. No. And we wonder sometimes, like 20 years from now, what it might be like to go back and watch these videos. So I think documenting your adventure, no matter how big or small, is important. And don't overthink it. Grab the iPhone, have fun with it, and that's it.
And see what happens.
See what happens.
I know you'll be glad when you look back.
All right, this was a doozy of a video, and we're glad you tune in every Sunday. We've got some cool winter camping stuff coming up. We're leaving tomorrow, and then Charlie's ready to go out, and then we're off to Florida. There's hair everywhere. I gotta go. See you later.
Charlie, what are you doing?
Hold on to the hand of self-destruction. I'm back to a place. Give me a second.